Vladimir Putin's entire drone strategy is falling apart. And this time, Ukraine isn't doing it all alone. In just 48 hours, two major drone hubs, one deep inside of Russia, the other in the heart of Iran, were destroyed. Two different nations, two different strikes, two totally different operations, but with one clear message. The drones of terrorist regimes and the dictators who build them are no longer safe. Ukraine struck Russia's drone factories, and Israel went further. It hit the Iranian factories and labs that are the source of the drones currently raining down on Ukrainian cities. These were not isolated incidences. These were precise, well coordinated attacks aimed at the very backbone of Putin's drone campaign. And this leads us to a secret, a truth that Moscow doesn't want you to know. Russia has never had the native capability to build Iranian Shahed drones on their own. Yes, Russia can assemble the drones, but build them solo? No, Russia cannot and never could. Because from the engines to the electronics, the Shaheds that are flying over Ukraine are made possible only because of Iran. But now, Iran's factories are burning, and the assembly lines in Russia are stalling. This has left the Kremlin scrambling because there's no easy workaround. Tehran is destabilizing. And this may be the moment that shatters Putin's drone war for good. I'm Jason J. Smart, special correspondent for the Kiev Post. And for over 20 years, I've fought Putin's dictatorship and stood alongside those who are risking everything to advance freedom across the world and to challenge authoritarian regimes. And in that pursuit, I've been declared persona non grata by Russia, banned from Belarus, arrested and deported from Uzbekistan, and other adventures along the way. But clearly that has not stopped me. So this channel exists to uncover what's really happening in global affairs, to decipher the truth, while exposing the lies that authoritarian regimes try to hide. All of this in hopes of supporting Ukraine in its fight for freedom. So if you believe in truth and holding dictators accountable is important to you, please help me. Please subscribe to this channel and like this video now. And if you wish, you can also become a member today. Every click helps. I appreciate it. Thank you. So what we are witnessing now is nothing short of being a total game changer, not just for Ukraine and its war, but globally. Today, Iran's government appears to be teetering on the very edge of strategic defeat. And according to Russian news, the Iranian foreign minister has already publicly signaled that Tehran is willing to halt all of its attacks against Israel and even to consider ending its nuclear program. But at this stage, let's be clear, the damage may have already been done. The momentum simply is shifting far too fast. According to a BBC article that came out last night, it was titled, "Israel's Endgame May Be Regime Change in Iran." But it's a gamble. Sure, perhaps it is a gamble. But one thing is now undeniable. This is no longer just about airstrikes on factories or military facilities. It's about ending the regimes that made those strikes necessary in the first place. And as we've discussed before, this is what we see transpiring within Ukraine as well. Ukraine realized that it needed a game changer, a paradigm shift. And that's the strategy that Ukraine is undertaking. And that's why whenever you see Ukraine striking within Russia, it's not just that Ukraine is striking a Russian drone factory, which is, of course, delightful. Of course, it's delightful to watch it burn. But it's about more. It's about eliminating Russia's capability to wage war, and ultimately, to eliminate the regime that built the factory. So, while supply chains have always been a target of past wars, what we're seeing now is fundamentally different. In the 20th century, to cripple an enemy's war economy, it would require tons of bombers, total air superiority, and you would expect heavy casualties. However, today, with just a drone and no pilots, small nations like Ukraine can shut down a superpower's weapons production. So for the first time in history, asymmetric warfare has been scaled to industrial sabotage. Wars are no longer won by how many troops you can get on the field or how fast you can get your tanks onto the field, but by how fast you can dismantle the enemy's ability to build the weapons deep inside of his own country with zero risk to your own soldiers. So on May 30th, Ukraine struck the Albuga Special Economic Zone in Tatarstan. That's the home of the Yelabuga drone assembly plant, the central hub for assembling Iranian-designed Shahed drones that are located within Russia. But then on June 14th, there was another attack. Ukraine stepped up its campaign, launching long-range drone strikes deep inside of Russia. It struck in Stavropol, where they hit a major chemical plant that helps make the fuel for both the drones and the missiles that Russia uses. Then, in Samara, they struck a key facility that's used to process materials used for military fuel in Russia. These were not some random targets. These are vital for keeping Russia's drone war running. And what happened just hours later? Israel launched its own precision strikes, this time deep inside of Iran. They hit factories, two different factories, that were building components for the same drones that Russia uses in Ukraine. So, more than that, there's something important that happened here. They targeted sites linked to drone fuel and materials. And reports say that several of the Iranian drone engineers have been killed or they can't find them. They've gone missing. Why that really matters? Because the drones flying over Kiev aren't built in Moscow. They're designed, engineered, and supplied from military labs in Iran. But now that chain is breaking. Russia doesn't just rely on Iran for drone parts. Its entire drone program depends on Iran's industry. Just consider this. For engines, Iran builds modified drone engines based on old German designs. Russia doesn't have anything like this in mass production. In the case of electronics, Iran uses Chinese antennas and chips to build the drone's guidance systems. But Russia doesn't have working versions of those to make on its own. For the fuel, Iran makes special chemicals that let the drones fly farther. Russia doesn't have that. Russia still only has old Soviet formulas. They're simply not as good. They don't allow the same results. And in the design, Iran has spent years developing and designing these drones. Russia doesn't have the same level of experience. So even Russia's drones factory in Yelabuga doesn't build drones just from scratch. What it's ultimately doing is simply putting together kits. It's using Iranian designs, Iranian parts, and Iranian instructions. However, this is not simply just a technological gap. It's actually a doctrinal gap. Iran perfected these modular drone warfare for strategic effect, but Russia simply never invested in it and never developed further this logic. And given what's going on currently in the world, Russia doesn't have a lot of other options. China is trying to avoid more sanctions or even tariffs from the United States and is unlikely to be the backing for this operation. North Korea simply doesn't have the engineering base to help Russia. So who can they fall back on? Well, what other allies does Russia have? Nicaragua, Cuba, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. So when Israel strikes Iran's factories and Ukraine hits Russia's plants, Putin isn't just losing drones. He's losing the entire ecosystem that made the drones possible. So over the past 2 weeks, Russia launched up to 300 Shahed drones per night to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses and to destroy infrastructure in Ukraine. But the strategy is backfiring. Ukraine isn't just intercepting drones, it's doing it asymmetrically. They're doing as General Ben Hodges always says, it's easier to target the archer than the arrows. And that's why we have to go after the source of the attacks, not the actual missiles or the drones themselves. But obviously, still we are stuck in a position of having to take down the individual arrows. Russia continues its attacks on Ukraine. And that's why on June 10th, the Ukrainian government launched a new initiative, offering $2,400 rewards to civilians who shoot down Russian drones. So just imagine this. Currently, Ukrainians are creating a nationalized air defense grid. It's cheap, it's mobile, and it's unpredictable. And compared to a Patriot missile, which costs about $4 million, this is going to provide a cost savings of about 99.94%. Russia is waging a war of quantity, but Ukraine, with its ingenuity, is fighting a war with quality, with creativity. This isn't just a wave of attacks. It's a doctrinal breakdown. It collapsed on 3 different levels. So what Russia is facing is that upstream disruption, which is Israel taking out Iranian drones and fuel production. The midstream destruction, Ukraine crippling Russian factories and logistics hubs. And finally, the downstream defensive. At the local level, we have Ukrainian civilians shooting down what's left with improvised tools. Iranian parts are disappearing. Russia's plants are burning. And what survives is now being intercepted by farmers with rifles and radios. This is what supply chain warfare looks like. And now we come to the real risk. Remember, since 2022, Iran has shipped or helped Russia to produce over 6,000 Shahed drones. Without Iran, there simply could not be drone warfare. But Iran today is unraveling. The IRGC factories have been bombed. We see that the top engineers are missing or killed. We see senior leaders are also missing or killed. We see that there's the sparks of anti-regime protest. We see the government has cut off the internet so people cannot rally against the government. And the Western sanctions are continuing, of course, to further squeeze the economy, including on imports. So if Iran's regime collapses or even fractures, Russia loses not only an important ally, but drone parts, drone engineering, and its most battle-tested realistic partner. This is industrial warfare meeting asymmetric strategy. What Ukraine and Israel are demonstrating is a new war doctrine. Wars aren't won by stockpiling missiles. They're won by choking logistics, targeting factories, and mobilizing the civilians. Victory comes not through brute force, but through supply chain attrition and strategic asymmetry. It's a doctrine built not in think tanks, but in the realities of how wars are going to be fought today. Russia and Iran built their war machines on stolen parts, foreign engines, and deniable networks. But today, now, that model is dying. What we see today is that Russia cannot survive without Iran, and Iran is struggling to survive. Iran's factories are on fire, being struck by Israeli precision. Russia's drone production is imploding because of Ukraine's attacks on them. What survives now, when it finally gets to Ukraine, will be shut down by farmers, in addition to all the Western support that's come, including the Patriot missiles. So it's not a hypothetical problem. This is a problem of right now. Putin's drone war is crumbling because two democracies understood the system and broke it. Authoritarian regimes survive by hiding their lifelines, by hiding the truth, by building their war in the shadows. But this week, Ukraine and Israel turned on the lights. And that's why factories began to explode. That's why the supply chain finally snapped. And the world saw what sustains dictators and how to stop them. So if Iran falls, Putin will fall. One drone part or one drone component at a time, they will fall. And people often erroneously think that dictatorships are strong. But in fact, they're not. They're weak. They appear strong, but they're very brittle. And when enough pressure is applied, they break. So please, help me get the truth about these tyrannical regimes to more people. Please like this video and click subscribe. I appreciate you watching today. As always, thank you. And thank you for supporting Ukraine.